And welcome back to the State of the SEL. I'm your host, Mr. Bepic. There's just 1 week remaining in the SEL group stage, which means for most teams, just one series left for them to define their group play results. Let's jump into this week's stories. Let's start off in Group 2, where things have gotten insane. After 2 big upsets this past Wednesday, we now have a 3-team race for that second clinching spot, heading straight to playoffs. We're able to grab it. Florida State, even though they got upset by the South Carolina B team, USC Garnet, yesterday, they have still clinched their spot in playoffs, so they're good thanks to their game win percentage. But Louisiana Tech, they beat South Carolina's A team in 4 games on my stream, and it was a massive upset. South Carolina's A team has only lost 1 group stage series ever in their existence in the SEL prior to yesterday. Now they got 2 of them, and now that second place spot of theirs in a little bit of danger. If they win 1 game against Florida State, that series coming up in a couple of days, then they're safe. They get top 2, they make playoffs, no LCQ for the South Carolina A team. But if they get swept by Florida State, then they'll be in a 3-way tie with Louisiana Tech and USC Garnet for that second place spots if Louisiana Tech and USC Garnet end up sweeping their series, which there's a possibility of. Louisiana Tech plays KSU and USC Garnet plays Houston, so maybe something crazy happens right there, but if South Carolina get just 1 game, they're safe. Despite all the craziness, despite all the upsets this past week, we'd have FSU and South Carolina as the 2 teams going to playoffs, but still, something to consider going into week 4. Now, moving over to Group 4, where Oklahoma is kind of a big story coming out of that pool because they were 4-0 going into week 3, had a phenomenal start to this season of the SEL, but they took on UNCC and they took on King. They lost to UNCC in Game 5, and they lost to King in a sweep, as most teams that have played King this season have, but they looked so competitive against King that I really think a whole lot better of them after this past week. Even though they went 0-2, which is a little backwards, I still have my stock in Oklahoma rising because I wasn't a true believer in what they were capable of with their 4-0 record going into week 3. I thought it was a little fraudulent, but with how they played UNCC and with how they played King, I think Oklahoma could honestly pull some upsets off in the last chance qualifier, in the playoffs, once they make it there. So the Sooners, they're a dangerous team. Anyone who underestimates them, like I have been for way too long this season, might find themselves in a little bit of trouble. But 0-2 this week, got a rebound in week 4 with their series against Full Sail Armada, but that's a team that they should definitely be beating, cementing them as a 5-2 team at the top of Group 4. And hey, if Kentucky ends up losing to King, there's a chance Oklahoma squeaks by in Group 4 and goes straight to playoffs in that number 2 spot. That being said about Oklahoma, though, UNCC in a very similar position, 4-2 right now. And in Week 4, their final matchup is Montevallo, so they should more than likely be moving to 5-2 after that final week, which again puts them in contention for that number 2 spot if Kentucky slips up against King, which that's a ginormous series because if they end up dropping in sweeping fashion, they'll fall to 16-10 in games, and Oklahoma and UNC both have good chances of going 17-8, 17-10, or somewhere in that range, which I haven't crunched the numbers just yet with game win percentage, but we could have ourselves a serious tiebreaker situation in Pool 4 determining who that number 2 spot is going to go to and who that spot is going to help out a ton when it comes to avoiding the chaos of the last chance qualifier. And I know we're bouncing around a little bit with the order of the groups that we're visiting, but over in Group 1, Florida is the team that I really want to talk about here. Now they're 4-2 with a couple of convincing wins against Clemson and Arkansas back in Week 3. I don't know if they're going to nab that number 2 spot that UTK is looking like the favorites to take, but UTK's got a rough end of their season. They've got 3 series left against UGA, Florida, and Clemson, which, if they slip up in 2 of those 3 series, then Florida could start to move in and talk about taking that second spot. Though, until then, Florida is on the outside looking in here, but they've had a little bit of an up and down season. 4-2, great result for them, but when it comes to the last chance qualifier, they've had some inconsistencies so far that they will need to work out if they want to find themselves in that top 16 playoff conversation. So Florida, I think they're in a good spot right now in that number 3 position in pool number 1, but I'm wary about them going into the last chance qualifier, though very interested to see what they can do. And in the next segment of this show, I want to go through Bepic's series to watch here in Week 4. Now, it's not just Week 4 series that I'll be listing. There are a couple of Week 3 series that got rescheduled to the week of Week 4, so it's a little complicated, but you'll get the gist once we start getting into this. Over in Group 1, UGA versus UTK. I talked about the stretch of play that UTK is about to go through to end their season. Those last 3 series are going to be pretty big tests for them. But the UGA series is going to be the most difficult. Both teams are undefeated. This one's happening Monday night, which should be the day that this video goes up. So make sure you watch that series tonight, wherever it's being streamed, and see what UGA can do against UTK and vice versa, because the winner of that series is going to win the group. No doubt about that. UGA should be finishing with at least 6 wins. It's a matter of, do they beat UTK and get that 7th? And then UTK, wouldn't be surprised to see them finishing with 6 wins. So same deal for them. And this is really a big battle between 2 contenders that could likely make a deep run in this playoff bracket coming up for the fall split in a couple of weeks. Also in Group 1, Florida versus Arkansas, a true SEC matchup here in the SEL between 2 teams that are in the middle of the table right now. And this series, I think, will tell us a lot about these 2 squads going into the last chance qualifier, where we'll more than likely see them. Because if Arkansas puts up a good fight or upsets Florida here, then they have got momentum going into that last chance qualifier, finishing above 500. And if you'll all remember, last season in the last chance qualifier, Arkansas, after going 1-6 in groups, made a run all the way to LAN. They qualified for a LAN that they unfortunately weren't able to attend, but bracket play could be where this team kind of gets unleashed. So Florida, for their sake in the LCQ, I don't know what the format would look like where they would have to play Arkansas, but they can squash some of that momentum here, maybe with a win against Arkansas in Week 4, and also elevate themselves into the top 2 conversation. If UTK slips up, like I was talking about earlier, Florida with a convincing win here could get themselves in the prospect for that number 2 position. And over in Pool 2, I've got 2 big Bepic series to watch for you. Obviously, the first one, South Carolina versus Florida State. Battle of the 2 best teams right now in Group 2, and a battle to see who's actually going to take first place. Even though they're no longer undefeated teams, it's still going to determine that number 1 seed coming out of Group 2. I talked about it earlier, all the crazy situations if South Carolina doesn't end up taking a series against Florida State. So that's also something to consider, but you still got to think about, this is to determine the number 1 finisher out of Group 2, which is still a big title to hold no matter what group you're in. And then the second series out of Pool 2 that I'm really keeping an eye on, UTK Black versus UAH White. Battle of the B teams who really haven't had a great season so far. Now, I'm recording this on a Friday because I am unable to record it later, so I don't know the result of the UTK Black versus Houston series just yet, but at the moment, UTK Black is 1-4, and this has not been a great season for a team that's talking a lot of smack in the SEL Discord. So if they end up dropping to UH, going 1-5, then they desperately need a win against UAH White, who, in all honesty, desperately needs a win as well to get back to their former glory in the SEL. I mean, in the past, UAH White has been a playoff team. They're going to have to find a way to get a win against the UTK Black roster that also desperately needs a win. So it's kind of wild animals backed into a corner kind of series for me. So that's why this one's something to keep an eye on, because even though it's not not two squads at the top of the table. You don't know what's going to happen here. It's still got serious ramifications over in Group 2. Pool 3. Almost as crazy as Group 2 right now. It's kind of done the same thing where it's divided itself into two segments with the top half, just four insane squads battling for the top two positions there, and then the bottom half where they're battling to make sure they don't get eliminated in this first stage of the SEL. So I'm going to start on the top half. My series to watch over there, Auburn University versus Cumberland University. And this one's massive because results this past Thursday shook up the top half of Group 3 so much, with Georgia State going 2-0. They beat Auburn and they beat Cumberland. I think they went 6-1 in games in those two series as well. So they've shot up to the top of Group 3, and now with their game count, they're in the number one spot. And they're playing UNA to finish their season as well. So with Georgia State at 5-1 right now, they might be going 6-1 and taking that group, but we'll see what happens there. Alabama's taking on Baylor, so they're kind of guaranteed 6-1 as well, which puts the result of the Auburn-Cumberland series on a pedestal, honestly. It can shake things up. It can put Cumberland at 6-1 as well, get us to a three-way tie. I need some tiebreakers to figure out who's going to be top two in Group 3. Or if Auburn ends up winning, they move to 5-2, tied with Cumberland, and that gives Alabama and Georgia State the top two spots in Group 3. So a lot is riding on that series. And another series for you all to keep an eye on, ECU, East Carolina University against UAB. If UNA somehow beats Georgia State, then the loser of this ECU-UAB series will be in danger of being eliminated, but I don't think that's going to happen. So this is more of just figuring out where these teams are at going into the last chance qualifier, because they've both beaten UNA, they've both beaten Baylor, and they've both lost to the four top teams we just discussed in Pool 3. So I'm figuring out where these two teams stand in the LCQ with this series, which is why it's a Bepic series to watch. And all the series we've been highlighting so far have kind of been building to this one. If you only catch one SEL series this week, it's got to be King versus Kentucky. The new favorites to win the entire league versus the reigning champs. This is a big one. Kentucky can show the entire SEL that they are still not to be trifled with if they're able to take down King here. And while they still can't grab the number one spot unless UAH Blue does something crazy against King later in the week, it's still a big statement win that would cement their spot in the top two, get them to playoffs, and show that maybe they are still the favorites in that final bracket of the fall split. But if King takes this one, they're going 7-0. I mean, UAH Blue, I respect them, but I don't think they're taking down King when no one's taken a game off of that roster yet this season. So big time series between Kentucky and King. And you better be watching. I mean, I don't know how much I can stress that. And the last segment of the state of the SEL, we got to say some congratulations to the teams that have already clinched their spot in the playoffs for the most part. We have one official clinch in Florida State University. They've made it through with their game win percentage, even if they lose to South Carolina this week. So congratulations to them already making it to that playoff stage. But two teams that have essentially clinched in UGA and King University. UGA, with that reverse sweep win against FAU, moved themselves to 5-0, and with one of their series this week against Tulsa, they should be finishing 6-1 bare minimum, which gets them top two. So congrats to the Bulldogs for virtually making it to the playoff stage. And then King, of course, 5-0. Haven't lost a game yet. Another virtual clinching of a playoff spot. So congratulations to them using that massive 5-0, 15-0 start to their advantage and joining FSU and UGA in the playoffs. But on the flip side of that, unfortunately, we do have to say some goodbyes. All four groups have had one team that is guaranteed to be eliminated already in the group stage. We've got Tulsa and KSU, who I think the rank disparity was just a little bit too much for this season, but I hope they got some great experience out of the SEL fall split, and I can't wait to see what they're able to do in the spring split. And then Baylor and Wake Forest, 2 more squads that are winless so far and won't be able to make up the gap in week 4. So having to say goodbye to those 4 rosters hurts, but, it's a product of the league. And they got 7 good series to get some experience with, get to that grindstone, and start improving a little bit more with the SEL this season. So, again, can't wait to see what they're able to do in the spring split, but we do have to say goodbye to them for now. All right, I'm recording this a little bit after the fact. I've just finished editing everything on a different date than recording, so hopefully that explains the different hairstyle and attire, but I hope you enjoyed. I'm really loving the YouTube grind and putting together these news-based SEL videos, so if you enjoyed, of course, like and subscribe and all of that, but if you think you have something I could improve on, please let me know. Discord DMs, YouTube comment section, any way to tell me what to improve. I would really love to hear it because I'm just starting out with all these YouTube videos. But, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully I see you in the SEL mainstream. 6 to 8 Central Time is coming Wednesday on the HSV Gaming Oasis Twitch channel. But, again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.